I'm Angeline Hartman, and this is a bonus edition of Inside Crime. Hi, everyone. There's one case dominating national headlines right now: the killing of Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia. There are so many questions about what happened. To help us understand this case, I want to bring in my friend, retired Atlanta homicide detective Vince Velazquez. Let's jump right in. Let's just start from the beginning, because a lot has happened. There's a lot of layers. You mentioned there's so much attention now. But the basics of the case, let's just go over that. What do you see? What are the facts of the case?
Okay, so here are the facts of the case that I've read, and I'm sure it's available to anybody in the general public to pull up and read. On February 23rd, the McMichaels were at home, live near a house on their street that is either under renovation or under construction. There are no windows, no doors, from my understanding, to this home. And they observe a person going into this unoccupied dwelling. And they, because of that, then the father and son decide to get weapons, one being a shotgun and one being a pistol, and get into their truck and follow or chase, and that's up for interpretation, this person. Now, it's alleged that this person, there's a video that surfaced that shows someone in that house on that day. And I think most people are comfortable with saying that is more than likely Ahmaud Arbery. A video is then released which shows someone filming as a black male we now know to be Ahmaud Arbery is running down the street, and there's a pickup truck that's parked at the end of the street. At the end of the street, one person is in the bed of the truck, and another person that we now know is Travis McMichael is positioned at the left front of that truck, holding a shotgun or a long rifle.
So one person is outside the truck. That's Travis McMichael. He's the son, 34. The father, Gregory McMichael, is in the bed of the truck, and Travis McMichael has the shotgun, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And what you see is Ahmaud Arbery running down the center of the street, skirting the center line. At first, running towards the left side of the truck where Travis McMichael, and from my estimation from the video, he's probably perhaps 30 yards away. At some point, he immediately changes direction, and then he starts running towards the right side of the truck. Travis McMichael, in the video, understandably, is moving and it's panning, and the person filming is also driving. So it's not a constant shot of everything that happens. So it goes in, it goes out, it pans in, it pans out.
Mm-hmm.
But at some
point,
point,
amateur video. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And at some point, you actually see Ahmaud Arbery go towards the front right bumper of the truck and turn left. And this is where you really can't see. But if you play the video, once you see Ahmaud Arbery turn left in front of the front right bumper of that pickup truck, almost immediately you hear a gunshot. And then, as we all know, Travis McMichael backs up. You see Ahmaud Arbery and Travis McMichael appear to be in a struggle over the gun. Ahmaud Arbery
over the shotgun.
Mm-hmm. Ahmaud Arbery appears to strike Travis McMichael, and then you hear two more gunshots in a small amount of time. And then we know you see Ahmaud attempt to run, continue to run, and then he collapses. That's the video.
30 seconds, give or take.
Give or take.
Yeah.
Everybody could see that. The facts of the case are that they believe that Ahmaud Arbery had committed a burglary, a felony. A burglary in this state is a felony. It's a, when someone enters a dwelling, and I'm not, this is not quote unquote the law, but, paraphrasing it, it's when someone enters a dwelling, and that could be a house, a trailer, a boat, with the intent to commit a felony or a theft herein, the house, the apartment, whatever it is, a citizen, and even if they're trying to escape, can essentially affect a citizen's arrest if they're trying to escape, apprehend them. Now, the $1 million question is, what is a dwelling? Is a unoccupied house under construction a dwelling? And what I've always said is, let's just imagine hypothetically it was a dwelling. One has to first consider the facts. And as an investigator, I have to look at this and say, okay, did Ahmaud Arbery wake up on February 23rd and say to himself, I am going to go to that house that I've seen before that's under construction, and I am going to commit a burglary. I'm going to go steal something out of the house. So what can I steal from a house under construction? There's lumber, there's plywood, there's 2x4s, but I'm going to jog over there. It makes no sense. Okay, so as an investigator, I have to make an assumption that that's not a plan. It's not a good plan. I'm not saying it's impossible. He could have just went and run it, but we all know from the facts that he didn't come out of the house holding anything. He didn't have any item in his hand whatsoever. So I think it's reasonable to assume that he's running by, jogging by, and he decides to go in and take a look around. Again, the facts are, when he came out, he had nothing on him. Now, here's another thing that a lot of people don't know. Most states have another law. It's possession of tools to commit a crime. That in and of itself is a felony. In the old days, they call it possession of burglary tools. Had Ahmaud Arbery had a crowbar on him, a hammer, a screwdriver, people that break into cars, typically you find them with screwdrivers in their pocket. It's an easy tool to use to break into a car and to start the car. So if you add all those elements together, and this had happened, and when the police arrived and Ahmaud Arbery had a crowbar, a screwdriver, or some type of burglary tool, one can now attach that. There's a nexus to that idea that he was committing a burglary. We all know
that he was the burglar.
That's not the case. That's not the case. But even if he was committing a burglary, let's just hypothetically say that it has been established that Ahmaud Arbery burglarized that home. Period. Let's just go with this for now.
Sure.
And McMichael see this, and as he's running away from the home, he has nothing in his hands from the video, from what I've read, and I'd be interested to see if there's anything to the contrary. They've never mentioned that they felt that he was armed. This person that left this house was armed with any weapon, a knife, a gun, a hammer, anything. They then take firearms with them to go affect a citizen's arrest. So going back to the law, we have to use the only standard that's available to us, and that's the standard that police officers use. What force is reasonable? If someone pushed me and committed an assault against me, I can't pull out a gun and shoot him. That's not reasonable. Okay. I can use amount of force that I feel necessary if I'm in fear of my life. They never, ever, from what I've read, have articulated that that's what they felt, the McMichaels. So if you use that philosophy, that doctrine that police officers use, one could argue, and I think rightly so, that the force that they used was not reasonable to affect. So let's get past whether or not he was, and something that really kind of bothers me a little bit is people are getting stuck on, was he jogging? Was he running? Is this a burglary? Is it not a burglary? Hypothetically, I just gave you a scenario that it is a burglary. We're still here. We're still left with, we have to make a decision, a determination. One, as an investigator, if it was me, whether this force was reasonable. It's my opinion based on my experience and from what I've seen that it's not.
Yeah, so that's the question. No matter what he was doing, whether he was running, he was jogging, let's say he went there to this construction site, right, with the intent to come back and take all of the building materials.
Right.
What you're saying is, if I understand, it doesn't matter. Because at that point, he didn't come out with a weapon, and he didn't. It doesn't sound like he was threatening these two at that point.
Well, that's what it does. You're absolutely right. It doesn't sound like that to me. It doesn't look like that to me. What I've read, and I've seen some commentary on the news, and what I suspect they will say is that once Ahmaud ran around the front of the truck, he attacked Travis McMichael. Now, I can tell you, I've read the narrative in the police report. In that narrative, Gregory McMichael makes a statement to the police on scene that as Ahmaud Arbery rounded the front of the truck, he began to violently attack Travis McMichael, his son. And then, because he was in fear of his life, he shot the weapon. So with that knowledge, and I read that, that's why I went back and I looked at this video and I slowed it down and I looked at it frame by frame. I can't tell you, Angeline, how many videos, surveillance camera videos, cell phone videos, Ring doorbell videos I've seen in homicide cases I've worked over the years. Mm-hmm. And if it's available, you have to take. Now I am not a forensic video, scientist. That's not what I am. I'm a detective, a retired detective, but with experience that if something needs to be enhanced, and that there are people that do that. But a jury can see a video and they're allowed to see the video and we're allowed to give an opinion as to, why we made decisions. Once I slow this video down and once I look at the facts, as they've said in their police report, the narrative Gregory McMichael made the night of, what I see is something totally different. Here's what I see. When you see Ahmaud Arbery rounding the front of that truck, on the right side of the truck, I look under the truck, under the left front portion of the truck, the sun is clearly shining, and there's shadows that are cast on everything there, the trees, where Travis McMichael is standing, the door is open, the driver's door is open. And when I look under the truck, what I see is I see a horizontal, long shadow, which I believe to be the shotgun. And right underneath it, there's a slight bulge under the shadow, which is where one would hold a shotgun with their support hand. So imagine if you're holding a shotgun, the stock goes into if you're right-handed, the stock would go into your right shoulder. If you're right-handed, your right hand would be around the trigger guard where the trigger is, and your left hand would be, let's just imagine it was a pump shotgun, which this one was not, by the way. But imagine that. People know what pump shotguns are. Your left hand would be where the pump is. If you look at the shadow, what you see is a long shadow of, this looks like, imagine if someone was holding a broomstick up and then there's a little bulge underneath. To me, what I'm looking at is the shadow of Travis McMichael holding that shotgun horizontal as Ahmaud Arbery is running around the front of the truck. Now, why is that important? The GBI charged the McMichaels not with murder. So in Georgia, there's two types of murder. There's murder and there's felony murder. Regular murder is where a woman decides, and I'm just giving you real life cases I've had, she doesn't love her husband anymore and he's got $500,000 worth of life insurance, so I'm going to hire somebody to kill him. That's called murder. That's murder with malice, a forethought. You think ahead and you plan this. You want someone to die. Felony murder is when you commit a felony and as a result of that felony, somebody dies. And I've heard this a million times, so let's just imagine, Angeline, and this is a really far-fetched case, but this would fly in court. You and I are bank robbers. You're my partner. We're going to go rob Bank of America downtown Atlanta tomorrow. And when we go there, the security guard gets a drop on us and kills you. I'm getting charged with your murder. That's felony murder. We committed a felony. I committed a felony, and you died as a result. In this particular case, the underlying felony that the GBI charged him with is aggravated assault. It's my opinion, my professional opinion, based on what I've seen, the fact that his shotgun is level, he's pointing a shotgun at him. That's aggravated assault every day in this state and in most states. So for him to have the shotgun level and ready to fire, that's ag assault. You cannot just point a gun at somebody unless you can articulate that your life is you're in fear for your life. If you look at the video as in full speed, just let it run, and you see Ahmaud run and take that left in front of the truck, that first shot is immediate. You look under the truck, I see that level, that shadow, which I believe to be the shotgun, which is basically level and aimed towards the right front of the truck as Ahmaud is turning that corner. And you immediately hear a gunshot. And then if you continue watching the video, and as they make their way, fighting over the gun still, towards the left side of the driver's side of the truck, if you go frame by frame, you will see on the right side of Ahmaud's t-shirt, it's blood soaked. That first shot struck him. That very first shot struck him. So it's my opinion, at the point where he is pointing that shotgun, waiting on Ahmaud to come around the corner, whether Ahmaud grabbed the gun or not, I mean, I have to think, if I'm running and I don't feel like I did anything wrong, and that's an assumption on my part. We don't know. I'm not saying that he didn't do anything wrong. There's no evidence right now that I could say that he did from what I've seen. Something else may come up later. I don't know. But again, I gave you a hypothetical. Even if he did commit a burglary and he's being chased by people and they have guns and he clearly sees it and he rounds the corner and this shotgun is pointed at him, is it unreasonable for someone to try to take that gun so you don't get shot in your back as you're running away? And again, that's for a jury to decide. That's my analysis of why I think, based on this evidence, right? And I've had videos. I've put some videos out on Instagram, and I've talked about, justice. For me, the injustice has been that it's taken this long. And if you realize, when the GBI got involved, they made an arrest literally within days, once they got the evidence that existed from day one. And if you realize, and you look at the press releases and the press conferences, they make no mention of any new evidence. Not to say there isn't. They based their decision on the evidence that existed from February 23rd.
Once again, I just want people to do their own research and make sure that they are looking at concrete facts, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and you have
100%. And I've always, I've always said that people really need to, not to stay off the internet. The internet is a good source of information, but, vet these information, these facts or alleged facts, with some type of your personal investigation. Ask people, and here's another thing. I mean, there's so many people out there giving opinions right now. Oh, my friend's an attorney. Well, okay, he's a tax attorney. What does he know about criminal law? What qualifies that person to give an opinion? They study law in law school, but that doesn't mean, that's like me investigating a white collar crime. I wouldn't have absolutely no idea what I was doing. A brain surgeon, doing open heart surgery. That's why people specialize in different things. And it's just sad that, people, it's like, and it's hard for me to make comments and talk about this case without recognizing like how much, like, in history, people feel the pain, like, the sins of the father. Like, we feel, right, the pain that our ancestors felt, right? The people who, went through the civil rights movement, people who, you look on the news every day and you see the disparity between, black and brown people and Caucasian people. It's unless you have, have experienced that. I'm Puerto Rican. I've experienced it personally. I experienced people, looking at me differently. And I used to tell people this all the time. I wore a suit every day for 17 years working homicide. And I can't tell you the difference of how people look at you when you are in, cut off jeans, flip flops, and a t-shirt versus when I have a suit on. 100% different. So, it happens, and people are feeling that, and people know the injustices that have happened. And this hurts. It hurts people, but you can't guide your decisions on emotion. You have to take a very robust look at the facts and be prepared to change your opinion. I'm prepared for that. I'm prepared for my opinion to change. And if you can't say that, then you're not being objective. Mm-hmm. If something came out and it was something that it's irrefutable, I would have to examine that and say, okay, my opinion may change. And then not totally, but in certain areas, what I mentioned about the shadow of the gun, that's not fact. Again, I can't prove that. all that is a tool. That would cause me to say I would focus on the neighbors that lived in the front of the truck, more so in the back of the truck, to see if there's anybody out there that saw that. Imagine if there was a neighbor that was out in their yard. They said, well, I saw him holding the gun and it was level. Well, that married up with what I feel is the shadow of that gun being level. That's evidence. That's something a jury should hear. So everything I've said is just tools that investigators would use to further their investigation. I can't prove that that shadow is what I think it is. It's just a nugget. That's all it is, a nugget to make me move in another direction.
What have you heard out there that is wrong that you want to make sure you correct?
Well, well, again, you know, what is a burglary? You know, some people are saying the minute you step onto a property is a burglary. That's not the case. I mean, you read the law. The law is very specific when it says, it's, entering a dwelling, occupied or unoccupied, to commit a theft or a felony therein. And it's all about the facts. Like if there was a door and somebody kicks a door in and you see that, well, how much more articulation do you need that they're going inside to commit a felony, right? I mean, we got to wait for it to happen. I mean, you have to wait for a woman to get sexually assaulted before you know. This is an unoccupied house under construction. That's not reasonable to assume, in my opinion, that somebody walking in, and I'm talking to people who say, oh, it's a felony in progress. No, that's not. In my opinion, in my experience, it's not. Another situation that I see has come out where the person that we now know is
Brian Williams?
Yeah,
is it Brian Williams?
Brian Roddy Williams, right. So the guy that's filming all this, Brian Roddy Williams, if you listen to the end of the video, you hear a click. And I don't know how many times I've heard people say, oh, that's him cocking his gun. Okay, first of all, what does cocking your gun mean? Okay, it's two things. It could mean two things as far as I'm concerned. If you're actuating the slide, meaning you're racking one in the chamber, if that's what you're saying, and people have said that personally to me, I'm like, okay, let me present a situation. You tell me how you think this works. Do you know how a gun works, right? You have to hold it with one hand and you have to grab the slide with the other hand. So how would he be filming if he's doing that? He doesn't have three hands. So you can't be racking the gun. Well, maybe he's pulling the hammer back. Okay, maybe if he had a 45, some 45s have external hammers, maybe. But how about this? What if he was just undoing a seatbelt, right? Go to your car, get in your car, click the seatbelt, and then unclick it. Tell me what it sounds like.
Does it sound like that?
To me, it does. Maybe it doesn't to you. That's my opinion. Again, do your research. You have a car, you have a seatbelt. Go try it. See what you think. But see, that brings up another interesting theory. From what I've seen and what I've read about him, he's claiming he's literally just a nosy neighbor and decided to jump in his car. He had no real association with the McMichaels and start filming. Now, why does one take a seatbelt off typically? To get out. So this is just, food for thought. If you are just filming and this thing is coming, basically you can hear the seatbelt coming off before the shots are even heard. Why are you doing that if you're just filming? Is your intent to get out of the car? And if so, that's the question I would ask. Why'd you take your seatbelt off? Why were you going to get out, and for what purpose? I don't know what his involvement is. But at this point, unless there's some overt action that, comes up that he conspired with the McMichaels, he's a witness, and he probably knows more than we know right now about them. So if there's an opportunity for him to testify in front of a jury to really put this into perspective, then he needs to do that. And a witness he'll be. If something else comes up that shows he is more than what we know, because again, all we know right now is what we've seen. That's all I know. I don't know anything more than anybody else does about Roddy Williams. We'll have to see how that plays out.
To be clear, the only people who are charged and arrested are the father and son. So there have been no charges against this person who took the video.
That's correct. Travis and Gregory McMichael are the only two at this point charged with this crime. Roddy Bryant at some point, maybe, if something comes up. I will say this. I know the GBI. I know Vic Reynolds. He's a director of GBI. He is a career prosecutor, DA. He was the DA of Cobb County. And if there was evidence right now that Roddy Bryant was involved more than what we've seen, he would have been in handcuffs and charged as well. And that's just the way they work. I mean, if there's a deal to be worked out, it's worked out on the end. Meaning, if his involvement was obviously he's not the shooter. If his involvement was very minimal, that's how things work. They charge people and then they make a deal with them, for the testimony. So I don't know. It's hard for me to give an opinion on him right now. But I know the GBI does a good job. I'm confident that, they got a little bit of a bad rap in this thing early on, because when this video came out, they were like, oh God, maybe people were saying if the video was out before they arrested the McMichaels, maybe they wouldn't have arrested him. I heard that. I've had comments like people DM me going, because I'm getting messages from both sides now. I posted my video and I get people who are like, hey, it was, good. Thank you for explaining that. It makes sense. And I have other people who are arguing that, this is probably a justified shooting. And I don't beat them up about it. I just listen and I give comments. But people were like, if that video was out, the GBI probably would not have arrested them. Well, they had the video from day one. The day Tom Durden, the special prosecutor, handed the file over to Vic Reynolds at the GBI, that video was there. They saw that. They considered that. That was part of their probable cause. In this case, it has a long way to go.
So let's just break it down into a few basic, let's just break it down into three separate areas, Vince, so that, because I think this is where it gets a little foggy for people. And I know you're not an attorney, but how can you explain to us in layman's term, the citizen's arrest?
Certainly.
Like, what's involved there?
So I'll give you some scenarios, and I'll use some really egregious crimes, and then I'll kind of go backwards to, where you have to make an interpretation of whether a crime is really happening. Obviously, if you are walking through a park and, day or night, and you see a woman who's screaming for help, who's being sexually assaulted, that's a quick determination that that's a felony. I mean, you don't even have to know what a felony is, but it's like, we know, right? Inherently as humans, we know. If you choose to, and you have no requirement by law, if you choose to intervene, you have the right at that point, because you've determined that there's this felony happening.
She needs help, and you want to save her.
Right. You save her, and you run over there, and you grab that person. So now we step into a new arena. Now we step into the arena of force. What is reasonable for me to use to affect the citizen's arrest as a civilian? And let's say, using that same scenario, I run over there and I grab that guy and I pull him off of her. And I clearly see he has no weapon in his hand, no knife, no gun, no bat, anything that is an instrument that could hurt me. Your hands are now the next thing that I'm worried about. And he starts to punch me, and I punch him back. Pause. So far, the amount of force that I've used is reasonable. I'm using the same amount of force. And even if I use a little bit more, it's reasonable. He's punching me, and, he hits me a couple of times, but I'm trying to get his hands behind. Now I've turned him over, and I'm telling people to call 911. Call the police. I need some help. She's screaming, and he's just floundering around on the ground. And I'm having trouble holding him down, because one of the elements, especially in this state, and I would, assume in most states, is if they're trying to escape. So it's not even to stop the felony in progress. You can even affect the citizen's arrest if you witnessed it and now they're trying to escape. He's now floundering around, and I then get my forearm around his neck and I start to squeeze his neck to stop him from escaping. But inadvertently, I kill him. Is that force reasonable? No, it's not. It's not reasonable. There's no part B or C If you look at the code section that says, if this happens, you do this. If he's resisting and you're choking him, if he starts to pass out, let him go. It's not that the law doesn't read that way. It's a reasonable, what's reasonable. And that's the same standard that police officers use. We have to look at the amount of force that we use, right? Articulable force. Is it reasonable for the amount of force that was being used against us? So let's just go with a scenario that's not as egregious, not as dire as a woman being sexually assaulted. And this is a real case. Store owner is in a store and a person is shoplifting. And they lock the door, which they have the automatic locks where you can hit the button. The door's locked. They can't get out. But somehow he manages to break the door and get out. The store owner follows him out. A physical struggle ensues. The perpetrator gets into their car. Someone's already called 911. Store owner pulls out a gun and shoots the car, thereby striking the shoplifter and killing him. Is that force reasonable? It is not. That's murder. Now, that could be manslaughter. It's a little different situation because clearly a crime was committed. The situation was brought to the person that was ultimately accused. The difference in this case and how all that relates to this case is what Ahmaud Arbery was doing. If it was a felony, it wasn't a felony, one, against the McMichaels, okay? It was a felony that wasn't a forcible felony, meaning no one was getting raped, no one was getting shot, no one was getting killed. There's not an immediate concern for public safety. But they still, in their mind, decided to engage this and effect a citizen's arrest. Whether that's right or wrong, okay? They can argue that from today until, we see two moons in the sky. In my opinion, where I have the problem is force. So as a layperson, we've talked three different categories. We talked about what a citizen's arrest is, the amount of force you can reasonably use to affect a citizen's arrest, and what's reasonable. And in this particular case, we're going to talk about defending yourself against unreasonable force. So in my opinion, when Ahmaud grabbed the shotgun, he has the right to defend himself from an unlawful citizen's arrest, which in my opinion is what he was attempting to do. He doesn't know who these people are. Again, and let me preface this is an opinion based on what I've seen in my experience. I can't prove this. And again, this is anything I could ever be allowed to testify in court because that opinion is not based in fact. But I'm talking from experience. He doesn't know who these people are. One guy's got a gun in his hand on the back of a truck. Another guy's got a long rifle. He doesn't know if it's a rifle or a shotgun. I couldn't tell from looking at the video what it was, but it's a long gun. That's what we call those things, long guns. It could be an AR-15. And as he comes around the corner of that truck, there that gun is pointed at him. You have 1 second to make a decision.
Either you run or you fight.
Right. Run or fight. And again, I don't know what was in his mind, but is it reasonable? And again, I keep saying this. Is it reasonable that he thought, if I don't grab this gun, I'm going to die? I think it is. So in essence, that's defense. He's defending himself to what he feels is, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know who these people are. And why is this gun pointed at me? So imagine you're walking down the street and somebody mistakes you from somebody else. Do I have to comply? I know I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just hypothetically speaking. I'm walking my dog and somebody jumps out of the bushes and says, get on the ground. I'm John Smith. I live down the street and you just broke into that house. I carry a gun. I'm a retired cop. Am I going to pull? Don't turn your head because, I'm going to be telling the police, I'm sorry I killed that man. I don't know who he is. And I'm going to feel really bad about it, but I'm going to defend myself. Difference here is Ahmaud had on shorts, a t-shirt, and some sneakers. That's it. He didn't have any tools. He didn't have a knife. He didn't have a gun. He had his hands. That's all he had to try to defend himself with. And he used those hands to try to take that shotgun away from being pointed at his face.
Vince, I just want to say thank you so much for breaking this down for us. It's a case that is going to be with us for a while and talked about. And so I think it really helps people to kind of hear, how you break it down and your professional opinion and analysis.
I just want to try to help. Thank you, Angeline.
That's it for this bonus episode of Inside Crime. To see those still images Vince mentioned from the video, go to our website, insidecrime.com. He highlighted certain areas for you to check out. Thanks again for listening, everyone. I'm your host, Angeline Hartman. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode of Inside Crime.